I'm a 25-year-old female living in a smallish but heavily populated downtown area in Florida. I don't really enjoy the whole downtown scene, due to the fact that I've had many friends get roofied and or meet just straight up creeps, so I don't really meet new people. Plus I have a really cute dog who I would much rather spend my time with. But one night, I was around 7 p.m. I was stupid bored and I decided to download Tinder. I had been on and off the app for years, just seeing it as a game when I was bored. I matched with someone I went to high school with and decided to go meet up with them for some tea to catch up, around 9 p.m. that same night. Somehow, that's not the bad part. I ended up leaving around midnight and decided it would be so much easier to just take a toll road back to my apartment. I decided to give my dad, who lives in a time zone that's 3 hours behind where I live, a call since it was late and I was getting kind of tired while driving. About 15 minutes later, I finally see the exit that I need to take and tell my dad that I'm just about home and that I'll talk to him later. I emerge into the exit ramp lane, preparing for the slight right curve in the road before you get to the streetlight at the end of the ramp when I saw someone running towards my car and waving their arms around. Now mind you, I'm going about 30 to 35 miles per hour on this exit ramp, which may not seem like much, but when someone is running towards your car at 12:30 a.m., it feels more like you're doing 90. I turn my high beams on in case he can't see me, and try to move over a lane so I don't hit this dummy. I suddenly get worried that maybe it's some drunk kid who crashed his car and needs help or something, so I stupidly, I know, pull over to the emergency lane. I locked all my doors and I made sure that all of my windows were rolled up before he approached my car, just in case this was some sort of trap that I had fallen into. The guy was somewhere around 21 years old. He didn't seem like the aggressive type. I worked in a behavioral hospital and had been around very aggressive individuals before, and had been threatened numerous times, and I got no feeling of this from him. He had one of those 21 plus wristbands on from the bars and clubs downtown, so I knew that he had to be drunk, but I also noticed his eyes. They were huge, kind of cliche, but like a deer caught in headlights huge. He was also profusely sweaty. I mean, it is Florida, but it was midnight in October, so it was sort of cool out for once. He looked incredibly panicked and tried to open the passenger side door. I had already locked them. Hallelujah. I asked if he was okay and if he was hurt. He said he couldn't hear me and asked if I could just let him in the car and that he would explain. I rolled down the passenger side window about an inch and said, "No." He kept repeating that he doesn't want to scare me and was begging me not to call the police. He explained to me that he was downtown, about 6 blocks away from where we currently were, and his friends left him and he doesn't have a way to get home and his phone is dead. I started feeling kind of bad for the guy and asked if I could call someone for him, but the number he gave me didn't pick up. Something switched in him. He got increasingly more confused and kept trying to get in my car, begging me to take him home. "I know you live over by me, Maria. You know me, Maria. You know me through Anthony. Maria, just take me home, please." Okay, so my name is not Maria, and I don't know any Anthonys. But he sounded so convincing that it made me take a hard look at him because, I mean, dang, maybe I do know him. But I didn't, and I tried convincing him of this fact. But he just started crying and banging on my car, becoming more agitated. I started getting a bad feeling and asked him to please get off my car because I'm going to leave. He backed away from my car and I proceeded down the exit ramp. Somehow it didn't end there. I get to the stoplight at the end of the exit ramp, and to my dismay, it's red. I had a second to think about what had just happened, and decided it would be in the best interest of the guy to call the cops, just in case he was to get hurt, since he was literally running towards cars on the exit ramp of a busy toll road at midnight wearing dark-colored clothing. The light turns green as I'm on the phone with a 911 operator as I see this guy running towards my car in my rearview mirror. My heart fell to my ass. I explained the situation to the operator and informed her that he is running after my car and I'm just trying to go home. He tells me to go the opposite way from my apartment, so he won't know where I live and to continue driving. So I listen to her and give her a description of him while driving on a completely empty road, with him still full on chasing my car. At one point, I had to stop because there was a car in front of me at a stop sign. Unfortunately, he caught up with my car and proceeded to bang on the back windshield. He started screaming at me to please stop and to let him in the car. Thankfully, I was able to pull onto a different street and lose him. The operator had heard everything that was going on and asked for my information. She assured me that the cops were on their way to his last known location, and as long as he's not still following me, then I'm okay to go home. I never found out what happened or who the guy was. I think that he was drunk but also ended up taking something else which caused him to act like that. I've never seen a person who was just drunk with eyes that dilated, or that confused but also able to fully sprint towards the car. Regardless, let's never meet again. I've been reading this subreddit for a while and this is my first post. This happened to me about 2 years ago, but I think about it a lot still. Even to this day, I get so scared when I think about it and what might have happened if my dad wasn't there. Obligatory comment about I'm on mobile and I'm sorry if there's anything like formatting issues. Also, I'm not the greatest storyteller, so please bear with me. During this time, I was going to grad school in Texas and visiting my family in Kansas City. I had just finished my visit and was driving back to Texas. I started my drive and about an hour in, I got a flat tire. I called my dad and he told me to call roadside assistance and that he would be there with the AAA card as soon as he could. He got there, roadside assistance put my spare on, and we went off to the nearest Walmart to get all my tires replaced. The nearest Walmart was about 20 miles away, as we were in a pretty rural part of Kansas. I was following my dad, driving about 55 miles per hour since I was on a spare. There weren't a lot of cars on the highway, basically just me and my dad. My dad was a little bit ahead of me, so I don't think it was apparent that I was following him. Somewhere along the drive, I noticed a dark-colored SUV behind me. He was flashing his lights at me, swerving onto the shoulder and then back into his lane, accelerating so he was really close to my car and then he would fall back a bit. From the time that I noticed him, he did this for about 4 or 5 miles, which is a really long time when you're in the moment. I was about to call my dad because I felt like this was incredibly strange. Like I said, it was a pretty rural area and there were no cars around. If this guy was upset that I was driving slowly, he could have just gotten into the left lane and passed me, but he continued to flash his lights, tailgate me, and swerve onto the shoulder. At this point, my dad saw what was happening, took an exit, and parked on the shoulder of the exit. I followed. This exit was not the one that we needed to take. It was a rural exit onto a gravel road, and I don't think it's used very frequently. Lo and behold, the guy followed me as well. I pulled behind my dad, who was already out of his car with his arms in the air saying, "What the heck?" At this point, I think the guy finally realized that I wasn't truly alone. He slowed down, looked at both of us and hesitated for a second, and then he took a hard left onto the gravel road and took off. At this point, I thought about trying to get his license plate, but I was too late. The dust from the gravel road made it impossible to see his license plate. I still kick myself for not looking at his license plate sooner. I know this post may not be scary as some others, but this situation really scared me. We called the police to report it, but there's not much they could do since we didn't even have a license plate number. However, I did learn that if I'm ever in this situation again, to call Highway Patrol, not 911. When you're on the highway, you travel through so many jurisdictions that it's better just to call Highway Patrol directly. It's maybe common sense, but it wasn't something that I had thought of before. Since that day, I've had the number for Highway Patrol in my phone in case I ever need to use it. So stranger who was trying to get me to pull over. Let's not meet. I never thought I would have anything to post here, but here I go. This literally just happened, so I'll try to keep this as short and organized as possible. But I apologize if it's neither of those two things. I'm a 29-year-old female, and my partner is a 23-year-old female. We are back in our hometown, visiting our family for about a week. It is a very small, isolated town in the middle of nowhere, and basically in the middle of the woods. While we were here, she wanted to meet up with an old high school friend who still lives in the area. We'll call him Kyle. So we meet Kyle at the beach, and right away, he's acting super weird, making jokes about having a three-way with us, and just making a bunch of unwelcome, overly sexual, gross comments about us. Obviously, we're unfortunately used to this stuff to a certain extent, but coming from someone who was supposed to be her good friend, it was extra annoying. So me and my girlfriend are shooting each other panicked looks the whole time. Once he's out of earshot for a second, she says that she's sorry, and that he's never been like this before, and we can make an excuse to leave. When he comes back, we tell him that we want to get dinner at a local bar, but he just asked to join us. We felt awkward, so we end up saying yes. He says he doesn't know quite how to get there, so he follows us. We get there, order drinks and food, and then head out to the patio with the drinks. He makes a few more gross comments, but is generally being way more cool and normal than he was at the beach. We're smoking weed on the patio and just chilling. The food comes quick and we finish it quicker. Now here's where it gets really messed up. So halfway through my first drink, I'm feeling really tired, which makes sense as we've had a long day. I give my girlfriend the signal that I want to go. She makes an excuse that we need to go, but he keeps trying to get us to come to his house. I've got good weed and dabs there and you can meet my cats, blah blah blah. He's being really pushy. We keep saying no and making excuses, that we need to check on her grandpa and so on. We finally get in the car and say goodnight. We had parked next to each other and walk up and into the cars together while saying our goodbyes. When we get in the car, my girlfriend informs me that she wants to stay at the bar, but fake it like we're leaving because she doesn't want to chill with him anymore, understandably. So we're sitting in the car waiting for him to leave first, when he signals for us to roll down the window. We do when he says his GPS is being funny, and can we lead him to the main road? To be fair, we are out in the middle of nowhere, so that didn't seem too outlandish. So obviously staying behind at the bar was out of the question. So in the car, we were talking about how pushy he was being, and she admitted she feels weird driving back right to her grandpa's house, so we should drive into town until we lose him. He's behind us for a long time, even way after he should have gotten off on his exit. We think it's weird, but weren't sure what to do. So finally, we get onto a 2-lane road and he pulls up next to us, and he's waving a phone, which is clearly my girlfriend's phone, in the window. We pull over, he gives her the phone back, chats for just a few seconds and then leaves in a hurry. Here's the part that makes my skin crawl. We know she had her phone. I saw her put it in her fanny pack, which was on the table, along with my phone and her weed, a few minutes before we left the bar, as we were preparing to leave. She didn't take it back out. There is literally no way she could have left it at the bar. And more importantly, he got in his car and left the bar at the same time as us, meaning he had to have already had the phone when we were leaving. It's not like we left the bar first and he saw it left on the table or something. He literally had to have been walking to the cars with us and call me saying goodnight with the phone already in his possession. And now the kicker, apparently, unbeknownst to me, my girlfriend had tasted a very weird bitter taste in her straw at the bar and was already suspicious, especially with how he had been acting. This is why she wanted to stay back at the bar, to get away from him and stay in public where she felt it was safer. So when he walked up to the car to return her cell phone, she very casually and deliberately flashed the knife that she had kept for protection in her jacket. I didn't know at the time that she had done this, so that's why he had left so quickly. Obviously, I was annoyed with her for not telling me her suspicion sooner, but she just didn't want me to panic. I'm really shaken up. A few things are clear. One, he stole my girlfriend's phone, and it seems like he did so that we would be forced to pull over on a dark road in the middle of nowhere. Two, he quickly ended the conversation and left when my girlfriend had flashed her knife. They'd been good friends for almost 10 years. If he wasn't planning on doing something malicious, I feel he would have acted confused about the knife or said something like, "Why are you flashing a knife at me? What is this, a bad movie?" Or something like that. But instead, he just booked it, which tells me he knew exactly what she was doing, reacting to a threat and preparing to protect herself and me. 3. He probably spiked our drinks. My girlfriend noticed a weird taste in her straw right away, and chose not to finish her drink. I finished half my drink and I felt very tired. A few more things. I just don't know how he managed to nab the phone without us knowing or noticing. It doesn't really make sense, but he did. Me and my girlfriend both remember her putting in her fanny pack perfectly. We also have no idea how he could have spiked our drinks unless he was working with the bartender. But we were the ones who had suggested that bar. I don't know exactly how he did it, but I think I know why. And for that reason, my girlfriend's now ex-friend who made creepy sexual comments probably tried to drug us and stole her phone in order to get us alone on a dark road. Let's not meet again. This happened to me the other night and spooked me pretty good, especially with everything that's going on right now. I had spent most of the evening visiting my mom at her house, and at 2:30 a.m., left to go back to my place to get ready for work. I was due in at 5 a.m. I was driving up a major state route that goes through the southeast side of the city we live in, that also stretches for miles beyond the city limits. The roads were pretty much deserted, and the only other person out with me was a small black Chevy that was following me a little close. Enough for me to take notice but not give it much thought and kept driving, lost in my own thoughts. We came up on an intersection where the road widens a bit, and when it did, the Chevy changed lanes and picked up their speed in order to pass me, to which I thought, good riddance, and get off my bumper. But when we got to the next intersection that was shortly beyond this one, they were still driving beside me and keeping pace with my car. I looked over and saw 4 young guys, late teens to early 20s, all staring at me, and something in my gut told me to floor it once the light changed. I stopped on the gas when the light changed, but instead of leaving the Chevy in the dust, I was horrified to watch in my side mirror as they sped up as well and continued to match my speed. I didn't dare to look at them straight on, but at one point, when they were still beside me, the guy in the front passenger seat opened his window and was shouting and waving something in his hand at me, which I saw out of the corner of my eye, and proceeded to freak out and pound the gas even harder. I called 911 as soon as our little chase started, and had to be transferred to 3 different police departments as they continued to keep pace with me and chase me through 3 different jurisdictions before I finally lost them at a traffic light further north. At one point before they dropped off, they got behind me once again and started playing this little game where they would ride my bumper, drop their speed and fall behind, and then speed back up to being on my bumper again. After they got stuck at the light, I floored it to put some distance in between us, and then made a quick swerve into a side street in a dark neighborhood, and got lost, winding my way through a few more neighborhoods, and eventually ending back up in a jurisdiction of the 2nd Police Department that I had talked to that night. 2 officers agreed to come find me, and I crouched in my little hiding spot with lights and car off, seat reclined so I could duck down. Once the officers showed up, I gave my statement and a description of the car, and the 2 officers agreed to follow me as far as the city limits before turning around. I made it home with no further issues, and 2 out of the 3 police departments issued a bolo for the car. Be safe, guys. It's crazy out there. This story happened slightly over 20 years ago, back when I was 16. And during this time, I lived with my mom and stepdad in a remote area 70 miles west of Las Vegas. I had gone out to visit with my friends, being allowed to drive myself for the first time ever. I had a lovely time watching a movie and getting food together, until it was time for me to head home. The curfew I was given was 10 p.m., with the caveat that if I was running late for any reason, to find a payphone and call. The night wrapped around me in my old 71 Chevy pickup, as there were no street signs or houses for most of my way home. As I pulled up to the first of 2 stop signs, I could see an older sedan. Old cars are still pretty common in that area. Stopped with its hazards on. I pulled up behind it and waited as a man, 30 to 40, started walking towards me from the driver's side. Even at this point, I didn't have any alarm bells going off. Being in the middle of the Mojave Desert, providing assistance to stranded people was common. People rapidly get into severe problems there by not having enough water when a vehicle breaks down, or not realizing that it's a desert, and people die wandering deliriously away from the highway trying to find help. Anyhow, I rolled down my window, and as he came abreast of my door, I could smell the liquor on him. I could see another man in the passenger seat. As this was before anyone I knew had cell phones, and the nearest payphone was a good 10 minutes drive ahead, I didn't have a way to call the cops on a drunk driver immediately. The man explained that his car had stalled and asked if I could help him out. I asked if his car was a stick shift, which it was, so I asked him if he was familiar with push starting it. He said yes, so I agreed to, as gently as I could, push the car with my truck while they turned the engine over. For anyone that isn't familiar, this is a way to start a manual car that is having battery or starter issues, specifically to get it somewhere to work on it. I knew my truck would be fine, and I didn't feel like it would be wise to get out and try to push their car physically. Push starting the car worked without a hitch, but here's where things go south. They get back out and thank me, and then invite me to hang out and have some fun with them. I decline. They pull off to the side of the road, and I continue on my way, but they start following me. So here I am, it's 9:50, I'm running late because I stopped to help them. Admittedly, I hadn't given myself much leeway from leaving my friends. These drunk, creepy older guys have started to follow me on a road without any man-made light, except for car headlights, and I'm at least 10 minutes from a payphone. I think to myself, maybe I'm being paranoid, so I turned down a road that I know gave a couple of turnoffs to either head back to town or loop around to the gas station with a payphone. The car follows behind me. I'm thinking, crap. I'd take another turn that only leads to a couple houses at the end of the road, and they turn behind me. I'd take another turn to loop around back to the gas station, and they follow me again, so at least I know they're following me and not just heading home. At this point, my heart is pounding. I decided to try something to lose them. I pull to the side of the road. I see them pull up behind me. I wait as the driver gets out of his car and begins walking towards me. His companion also gets out and starts walking towards me. I wait until they almost get to my tailgate and then I floor it. My wheels dig into the rocks and poof dirt, causing a cloud behind me. With the leadway, I head towards the gas station. The gas station is deserted, but the payphone is showered in the light from the gas pumps. I call home and explain what happened and why I was running late. My stepdad asked if the gas station worker could be seen, and I let him know that I couldn't see him behind the counter because he was probably in the back. I wasn't in trouble, but I was asked to hurry home. So, to the two drunk idiots that wanted to mess with 16-year-old me on my first night driving by myself, let's not meet again. I leave for work around 6 a.m. every morning. I live in a tiny town in Texas, so small we don't even have police. Nothing ever happens here. Until this morning. I left as I usually do, and the road I take out of town is a dirt road with no lighting. I usually don't see other vehicles, especially not behind me. This morning as I left, I noticed a car down the street with its running lights on, but I didn't think much of it. Until there is a vehicle behind me gaining on me with ridiculous speed for all the potholes on this dirt road. And then I realized the driver was trying to pass me. I have a healthy dose of paranoia, so this situation already had me on edge. And something in me said, don't let them get in front of you. So I didn't stop at the stop sign. The other driver proceeded to gun it around me anyway since I had reduced my speed. But since I never stopped, they couldn't cut me off completely. They then stopped in the middle of the road. I found myself pulling around the suspicious driver on the right, half off the road, and rolling down my window to ask if everything was okay. And that's when I noticed that the person in question had put the vehicle in park. They were halfway out of the driver's side door by the time I got around the front side of the vehicle, and our eyes met. I felt a moment of terror, realizing that if I stayed put, something bad would happen. I floored it and swerved around the front of the vehicle, crashing through numerous potholes to reach the highway. It was only a little ways off. He stayed on my bumper until I jumped into traffic, after which he stopped following and I called the county sheriff. They sent somebody to patrol, but it's doubtful that they'll find anyone. I drive a Nissan truck and the other driver was an older Tahoe or some similar SUV. I'm so shaken up that I called into work. I read that this happens all the time and I have thought, my life's so boring and I'll never have a post to contribute. But here I am. I had to write it all out because these scenes keep playing over and over in my head. Watching those headlights accelerate towards me. The fear I felt when they tried to start passing me or run me off the road. It was the scariest moment of my life when I looked into that man's eyes, like I could feel his intentions were to do me harm. Suddenly, I'm thankful for my boring life. So whoever you were this morning, let's not ever meet. Long-time lurker here, first time posting. I guess this isn't exactly something that happened directly to me, but something odd that I witnessed. This happened during the summer of 2017. Every weekday, I would wake up early, around 5 a.m. for a morning workout, and then head to my job. Generally, I would leave my house around 5:30, because my morning drive took around 25 to 30 minutes, giving me enough time for 2 hours before I needed to leave before my shift started. Most of my drive was just me putting loud music on, trying not to fall asleep, and it being the freeway before 6 a.m. Almost everyone was going at least 10 miles over the speed limit. I would drive most of the time on a main interstate before turning off onto a smaller highway, which I only used for a mile or so. This highway was 3 lanes on each side. People always drive fast on here, but usually not more than 75 miles per hour or more. And while you get some unsafe drivers in the morning, most people aren't swerving erratically. This highway runs north to south. An on-ramp from a main street becomes a lane, and then there are 2 entrances from the freeway that I would take every day. one from the eastbound side and one from the westbound side. I hope that makes sense, but basically, I got on from the eastbound side right as 3 cars from the westbound side are entering. One was some sort of orange sporty-ish car, and the other 2 were identical dark gray sedans. I don't remember exactly what make or model they were, but I remember them being fairly uncommon models. Not a sedan you would see 100 times a day. One was in front of this orange car, one behind. These guys were going at least 80 miles per hour. The orange car would change lanes, and the car in front would cut him off while the one behind him would change lanes to remain behind him. And they kept this up for the entire time that I was on the highway near them, weaving in and out of cars, not slowing down before I pulled off at my exit. This could be a complete coincidence and some asshole drivers, but I definitely got the vibe that the driver of the orange car was trying to get away from the gray cars. Maybe it was extreme road rage, or maybe something more sinister. Regardless, I'll never know. So, drivers of those gray cars, let's not meet. Okay, so this could have been nothing, but something about it felt so off. Some backstory. So last night, my sister, who lives 3 hours away from me, had somewhat of an emergency and asked if I would come stay the night with her. I packed my bags right away and headed there at 9 p.m. As I was about an hour away from my apartment, I realized that my car wasn't going to make it. The temperature gauge was rising and I didn't want to risk it overheating in the middle of nowhere. So I turned around, and when I'm about 15 minutes from home, my car overheats. At this point it's about 11:30 p.m. I pull off at an exit and wait for it to cool down, and then got back on the highway, but it did it again. So I pulled off onto the side of the highway. As I'm waiting for it to cool down, I tried to start it again and it wouldn't start at all. I'm a 23-year-old female, all alone and new to town, and my boyfriend was out of town, so I start to panic a little because I read so many damn Reddit stories. I managed to calm down and called my stepdad to let him know where I was and that I was going to call the tow truck. As I was on the phone with him, 2 cars pull off the highway right in front of me, and then one right behind me. My first thought was that they were going to help me, that they were all traveling together and needed to stop. But it was really weird that they pulled off at the same spot that I did, with one pulling in behind me. They all sat in their cars for what felt like forever, but was probably around 3 minutes. And then a man got out of one of the cars in front of me and started walking towards my car. He walked to the passenger side, stopped for 1 second, and then walked to the car behind me. This whole time, I'm describing what he looks like to my stepdad, just in case. He was then in that car for a while, then walked back towards my car. And as he was passing my window, hit it with his knuckle, knocking once, and he kept walking. They then sat there for a while and then all left at once. I'm realizing as I'm typing this that it doesn't seem that weird, but being alone on the highway with 3 cars pulled off in front of you and behind you is a suffocating feeling. And I really don't understand why he felt the need to knock on my window as he was walking by. I'm not going to lie, it made me cry because it was just so bizarre. I'm hoping they were just pulled off to talk to each other and I was just overreacting. But regardless, let's not meet. This story takes place last April. I was a senior in high school. I lived my whole life in the Midwest, so I was always eager for spring break when I would vacation to somewhere more interesting. This year, I was going to Oregon with my friend Mary. Mary was 3 years older than me and dating my best friend Josh, who was attending the University of Oregon. She happened to be moving there the week of my spring break, so it was perfect for me to ride along. We set off on our journey on Friday night at 10:30 p.m. I know it's a weird time to leave, but it was nice to get through Chicago in the middle of the night to escape traffic. and we spent most of Saturday driving through flat, boring farmland. We got to see the Badlands National Park, which was pretty cool, especially after such a boring day. At around 11 that night, we were both exhausted, so we called and booked a hotel in Montana, about 3 hours away. We were starting to enter the section of this part of the country that was pretty much just a ton of Native American reserves, when we turned down a long, beat-up road. Only one other car was on the road, and it was a large white truck that had been behind us for a while. We drove on this road for a few miles before this car started riding our ass. We slowed down to let him pass and he floored it. Again, us being exhausted, we saw this as an opportunity to get to our hotel faster. We figured it was a local that knew that he could speed without any trouble, so we sped down the road just a few miles per hour less than him to make our trip shorter. We came to a stop and he turned left, which we also happened to be doing. He pulled into a parking lot for a bar that was just on the corner as we continued, but he didn't park. He just waited, and as we passed, he pulled out behind us. Now, I'm a very paranoid person, so I told Mary that I thought he was following us, but she reassured me that he probably just didn't want us behind him, because some people are like that. I agreed and we kept on. I was still nervous, but I watched him turn off the road and my mind was at ease. Fast forward about half an hour, and Mary's starting to show obvious signs of exhaustion in her demeanor, so I offered to drive the rest of the way. She said, okay, and that she would pull off at the next chance. The problem was, the road we were on didn't connect with any other roads. There were no driveways or stores, or really anything except for wide open plains for miles. She decided to pull off the road to make the switch, but as she started to pull over, a bright set of headlights came up out of nowhere and looked like they were in the back of her car. This guy ran us off the road and we almost crashed. We came to a stop and both looked at each other like, what was that? But before we could say anything, the car from behind pulled off like 15 yards ahead of us, and it was the white truck from before. My heart sank and I said, Mary, don't get out of the car, just keep driving, do not stop. She was obviously weirded out at this point, but wasn't totally convinced that it was all that dangerous. But she saw that I was scared and started to creep back on the road. The guy ahead must have seen us moving as he started to drive too. We stopped again and he drove slowly, about a quarter mile up the road, turned off into a patch of trees and killed his headlights. I told her that I was sure he was following us. We had been driving forever, and what were the odds we had encountered each other again? She called Josh so we could get a third opinion. He was never the type to assume the worst, and he wasn't there. So he told us that it was probably a coincidence and that we should just keep driving and be wary. So we continued on for another 20 minutes without seeing him. But when we passed through another small town, I spotted him. He was sitting at a stop sign on the side of the road facing the road that we were on, with his headlights off. We passed by him. He turned his lights on and started driving again, right on our tail. At this point, Mary was convinced and she immediately called 911. We were in the middle of nowhere though, and her phone kept dropping the call. The dispatcher said they couldn't get a read on our location and asked where we were, but not even the map on my phone would load. We felt like we were dead already. He passed us again, and I shouted for Mary to speed up so I could write his plate number down. We got it right before he sped off out of sight. The dispatcher was able to find us and told us to head to the nearest police station, about 20 minutes away. She also told us to not stop driving, and that this guy was a professional at what he was doing. She informed us that his tactic of passing us was so he could know where we were turning and going, so he could always be one step ahead. Fear sank into both of us when we realized that he knew exactly where we were, even when we didn't know where he was. We drove on, with him popping out behind us once more and again speeding off. I got to the police station and I pulled up on my phone and we were almost there. We stopped at the light where we were supposed to turn right. but we hadn't seen this guy in a while and this looked like the perfect road to sneak around on. I didn't tell Mary to turn, she kept driving. She asked me where it was and I felt guilty not telling her. So I told her that we had passed it, and then my phone hadn't loaded the directions until just then. She made a U-turn and we headed back. On the way there, we passed the guy. He was headed the way we were going before turning around, and we don't think that he saw us. We made it to the police station where they were expecting us and they sent cars out to find him. We got a police escort to our hotel, an hour away, and the rest of our trip was as normal as can be. We calculated that he had followed us around 60 to 70 miles. We don't know if he was caught nor do we know what his intentions were, but I still get chills whenever I tell this story, and whenever I see a similar white truck. Remember this story while taking long road trips, and don't forget to always check what's behind you.